At 6.
Yeah.
I'm recording.
We'll start. So in terms of people, do we have a view of how many people have attended, attending?
We've got
We
22
have
thus far.
22 people
So we should
joining.
give it a few minutes.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think so.
please.
We're on 28 currently.
Take the phone.
Shireen, perhaps you just want to advise those who have dialed in that we're just waiting a few more minutes.
Good afternoon to everybody, especially the ones that have dialed in. We currently, if you can give us a few minutes, we're waiting for a few more attendees to join. So please be patient. We will probably start in another 2 to 3 minutes time. Can you check now how many?
32.
Okay. So at what point are we going to start? When it reaches 50?
I think that would be feasible.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, sorry, Sonwabo, what are your thoughts?
I agree with you, Didi. It's climbing, so let's just wait. I see maybe another.
Dimple, your screen is still a challenge.
It is still a challenge,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
It is.
Oh, I'm going to invest in a nice green backdrop. For such a young person, I feel like I'm incredibly untech savvy, but we'll make do. Shireen, will you cue me in when I may begin the introduction?
Yes, I will.
Awesome. Thank you.
A few more minutes for the ones that's joined. We're just waiting for a few more people to join. We should give us another 2 to 3 minutes and we should start the seminar, the webinar, sorry. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for joining and making the time to be part of this exciting webinar. We got a really great agenda set up for you. And basically, this webinar today is going to provide you the holistic ICT framework and strategies fostering sustainable uplift township economies and promote youth entrepreneurship while stimulating and enhancing digital skills. Especially if you look at what we are going through today, the pandemic has brought a new norm, and you hear us always talking about a new norm. And it's very, very important that specifically in our townships where they need the change, if you look at the education sector, the public schools, this is where we need to see how we can uplift our townships and make a difference to the economy, and especially promoting youth entrepreneurship. This pandemic and the situation that we had in our country in the last couple of days has also brought a different mindset, and our hearts and prayer goes out to a lot of the people that have gone through the hardship. And this is where this particular webinar is going to give direction in terms of how do we promote and build youth entrepreneurship? How do we bring in the digital skills, the technologies that we have? And we must thank Oracle. So our special shout out to Oracle in terms of providing us the Zoom link today to be able to have this webinar and to be able to share some great speakers and their thinking and their suggestions and what they're doing within the South African economy to promote the holistic ICT framework and bring about the difference and change and make things happen. Also, just some housekeeping before we go on. If all of you can mute yourselves, it's important. Also, in terms of questions, we've got a little box where you can put in your questions. Am I right, Amina? There is a question where the guys can put in their questions in terms of any questions you have. We'd like to keep it interactive as far as possible towards the end of the session. So please stay on. We do have an exciting, and I will unpack the agenda for you shortly. But please stay on because I think this is an exciting topic, right? That is close to most of us that has joined this webinar to listen and understand exactly what's going on and what are some of the speakers in terms of value and in terms of direction that they will provide to support this particular initiative that PAICTA is driving. On that note, we have a special lady with us who has actually founded PAICTA, who's founded this organization and been a very instrumental part of actually driving some of the initiatives and driving some of the agendas in this organization. So I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you a video because Oracle is our sponsor for this particular webinar. I would like to share with you this video in terms of what Oracle's offering and what they bring in terms of our topic today. Very rude of me. I should have introduced myself. I will be your host for today. I am Shireen Pillay, part of the PAICTA organization and support a lot of the drives and initiatives that we are putting out there to enhance and develop the communities, to make a difference in the women in South Africa and broader, not just South Africa, but into the Africa, Pan-Africa. So we are here to try and make a difference and see how we can empower women to take them to another level, to give them the confidence and let them know that there's organizations in place to support them, for them to be successful. Our agenda for today, I shared with you the housekeeping rules in terms of what we're going to be looking at. And in terms of Q&A, there is a widget below your screen. If you could pop in your questions and post your questions if you have any queries or whatever. The session is recorded today, so we will be sharing the recording of the session and documentation related to the session to you. And we will, towards the end of the session, as I mentioned earlier on, we will have a 5 or 10 minute Q&A. Our agenda for today, as I mentioned, we've got a jam-packed, exciting agenda for you, so please stay on, keep it interactive. We're going to have the update, as I said to you earlier on. This lady has been the founder and has brought together and been very instrumental in the PAICTA organization, and basically have put together a lot of hard work and dedication in order to make PAICTA successful. She's the founder. And the one thing I need to share with you, tomorrow marks a very special day for PAICTA. It is our 1-year celebration. It's actually a milestone for our organization. We celebrate 1 year tomorrow, which is a remarkable achievement for us to actually, get through a hard year with COVID, with all of the challenges that we faced. We were still able to deliver messages. We were still able to share with the broader community some of the sessions, the webinars, and some of the value adds that we as an organization are seeing that will benefit the broader communities. And Dipo has been a co-founder, very instrumental in our organization to take it to the next level, to bring in some of the sponsors and some of the panelists that you're looking at today. You know, she has extensive relationships and has really supported the PAICTA organization and taken it forward. So I now hand you to Dipo to share an update of PAICTA and where we're going as an organization.
Thank you, Shireen. I'm happy to be here to just deliver an introduction, just a little bit of background of the entity. PAICTA is the Pan-African Information Communication Technology Association. And everything that we stand for is inspired by the former president of South Africa, Mr. Thabo Mbeki's vision for our continent and the African Renaissance ideals of pioneering Pan-Africanism. So as Shireen mentioned, the organization was formed in July 2020 in a bid to become a digital transformative organization. And this week will mark the 1-year anniversary of the organization's inception and its positive impact and continued growth. And we're really excited to mark that occasion this week with this webinar. And although PAICTA is a relatively new organization, like the movements before it, we aspire to be truly pioneers in the Pan-African movement. And the relevance of this kind of unity of purpose in the 21st century is very pronounced, especially in this digital or technological age in the face of COVID. And we believe that the unique challenges that are faced by African countries require a collaborative effort by our nations that prioritizes a transformative agenda that is dedicated to bridging the digital divide and ensuring that the continent really derives sustainable benefit from this digital innovation. So we foresee that there's an Africa that we can see truly enhanced by the digital era, with technological development that is people-driven, that relies on the potential of African people while using its collective muscle to negotiate and collaborate on the international stage as well. So we aim to be a platform that facilitates the inclusion of the smaller players in this digital ecosystem, driving transformation and the betterment of communities. So to this end, we have become an integrated community and organization with a quest inspired by the spirit of Pan-Africanism and inclusion. We want to be a catalyst for the inclusion of rural and peri-rural communities by creating an enabling digital ecosystem, providing training, skilling, reskilling, upskilling, promoting a digital culture, availing networking opportunities and resources, making available platforms for discussion, robust discussion like this webinar, like hackathons. And this is all because we were created in response to the critical need to address the challenges that are faced by ICT SMEs, youth, women, people with disabilities, the greater communities at large as well. So some of these matters, some will be discussed in this webinar, some we'll touch upon in future webinars, are matters like the absence of a conducive environment for innovation and development, matters like sustainability, environmental impact, the challenges that come with the digital divide and the inherent inequality therein that's been amplified by the market disruptions that we've seen, coupled with the pandemic. Digital exclusion of our fellow African countries, gender inequality, access to resources. These are all gut punch topics that we love to grapple with because it really does speak to our goal. It speaks to our mission as an entity. So as I mentioned, through webinars, hackathons, boot camps, etc., we're able to really disseminate digital information, create platforms, make those platforms available to members of the youth to really show their creativity and innovation, to really push topics that are worth discussing. And at the heart of all of these initiatives, we have a mix of advisors, from professors in academia to business leaders and philanthropists. It really gives PAICTA the capacity, the competency, the broad knowledge base to create the programs and initiatives that we are so proud of, that reach out to the communities that we serve and provide what we believe is invaluable skills, invaluable thinking processes, innovation, promoting creativity, technopreneurship, entrepreneurship, and hopefully training opportunities for the underserved youth. So that's us in a nutshell. You are welcome to follow PAICTA on our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, we are on LinkedIn, or check out our website, particularly to keep up to date with our upcoming events, our past events. Our videos are also available on YouTube. for all of our past webinars, and we really hope that we are going to become part of the ecosystem of folks who are really bringing thought-provoking content to everyone around. Thank you so much. Back to you, Shireen. Shireen, I think you are still muted.
Yes, I can see that. My apologies. Thank you. Thank you for that inspiring, update. It's clear you can see where PAICTA is going and how serious we are of, on making a difference and bringing value to the community, especially, where women are concerned, and how we can empower you to go to the next level. As I mentioned, right, we have a jam-packed agenda for you today. We have some really great speakers, the likes of Daryl Dennis, who's the CEO of IUP, and I'm going to share a little bit more around that. We have Dr. Stella, who's the head of the Department of Applied Information and Science, and she's also our PAICTA Advisory Board panel member. And then we have Wandisile Makwabe, who's part of the Acting Executive Director of Economic Development and Tourism and Agriculture. And these speakers are eventually going to have a roundtable discussion where we have the opportunity to then question them and get answers and get feedback in terms of what they're busy doing within the community, and what are some of the initiatives they're driving to make a difference that's aligned to our topic that we've been discussing in this webinar. So now I'm going to hand you to Daryl Dennis. Daryl is absolutely familiar to this community, somebody who's been around, very, very predominantly in the public sector, been around and been very instrumental in making a difference. He's currently the CEO of IUP. He's going to be telling you around what we're doing from a Nelson Mandela Innovation Hub. And I now hand you over to Daryl Dennis. Daryl?
Thank you very much, Shireen, for those kind words. It's an honor and a privilege for me to represent the Nelson Mandela Bay Innovation Hub and this very profound discussion this evening. So I'd like to extend the thanks to the president of PAICTA, namely Mr. Sanwabo Dwaba, for inviting the IUP to be party to this initiative. So thank you very much. Shireen, I don't know who's going to put up my presentation.
My apologies, Didi. I'm going to put it up.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you.
Mr. Mdwaba is putting up the presentation. Lerato has a hand up. Lerato Mankonyane has a hand up. And Tandoleti Tombela. Shireen, how would you like to proceed with that?
Yes. Lerato, while we're getting the presentation up, maybe you want to share if you have any comments or you would like to ask a question to somebody.
Lorato's just indicated it was a mistake that she put her hand up.
Okay. Tando?
Tando, would you like to say something or ask a question? Sorry, I see it now.
All panelists, yes.
No.
Technology. Amina, I don't think I've got full powers to share.
You should, at the bottom, share screen.
Yes, but it says all panelists. I say yes, all panelists, and it's not moving.
No, share screen.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Gerald, can you perhaps share from your side?
You want me to click on share screen first?
Yes, and then you select the window that you would like to share on your side. We just want to check if it's going to work.
It's working perfect.
You've got it?
Perfectly. Thank
Yes,
you.
you just need to put it in presentation mode, Daryl.
Okay, I'm just trying to see.
At the bottom, yes, perfect. No,
It won't allow me to do that.
okay, that's fine. We can see your
Okay.
presentation.
Okay, so once again, thank you, everyone, and very honored to be party to this event and sharing the stage with Mr. Makwabe and Dr. Bavuma. It's an honor. So colleagues, the topic was quite broad. If you look at the title of tonight's discussion, it talks about frameworks, strategies, sustainable economies, and entrepreneurship. So I've attempted to address this as best I can. So as you can see who I am the current CEO for the Nelson Mandela Bay Innovation Hub, which is stationed in the Nelson Mandela Bay, or now known as Gqeberha. Next slide. Now it won't allow me, Shireen, to go into the next slide. Shireen?
Mr. Daryl, kindly share your slide. I'll ask Mr. Mdwaba to share all the slides with myself and Shireen, and we will do the sharing of the presentations.
Okay.
We apologize to.
So Nwabo,
You
could
can
you please
maybe talk
forward
through
my...
it in the meantime.
Okay, so
No.
sorry, just 1 second. I'm just trying to see what the problem is here. My apologies. Let me just try this again. I think it's the setup that won't allow us to do this at all.
Apologies, audience. We have a little bit of a technology issue which we're dealing with, but we'll start sharing.
Sorry, guys. This is proving to be a challenge. I don't know if the screen is just gone blank on both sides. 1 second. Man, sorry guys, I'm just going to go on mute for a second. I don't want.
And it's clear, Mr. Mwabe, you are meant to go first rather than Daryl. So thank you very much for taking the time and being part of this webinar. Mr. Makwabe is currently the Director of the Economic Development in Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality. Mr. Makwabe's career spans over a period of 18 years, having worked in various private and public sector institutions, namely development finance institution and commercial banks, retail and logistics, provincial departments and local government, as well as non-governmental organizations. He has worked as a lecturer at the Nelson Mandela University, the operations manager for the ShopRite Group, and an economist for Standard Bank, and an executive ed for the Old Mutual, amongst others. He's a specialist in agribusiness, economics, finance and investment, local economic development, sustainable community development, enterprise development, and the development of small, macro, medium enterprises. Mr. Makwabe is a PhD candidate enrolled in the University of Free State and is qualified with his master's degree obtained from the University of Free State. Mr. Makwabe has served in various advisory roles, namely a member of the community advising the MEC in the Eastern Cape Rural Development, and the Aryan Reform, a member of the community advising academic institutions on curriculum development, amongst others. Mr. Makwabe has also served on various company boards as a member and director. He is passionate about the youth empowerment through entrepreneurship, township economic development, and the development of SMEs in the informal trade. Wow, that is phenomenal. Thank you, Mr. Makwabe, and welcome. I will now hand you over to share your presentation with the audience.
Thank you so much, Shireen, for that introduction. Thank you, Mr. Dennis, for allowing me to start.
No pressure, sir, no pressure.
Is the presentation flight chat? Is it ready? Shireen?
There's nothing on the screen currently. So Nwabo, none of the presentations seem to be flighting.
Yeah. Amina, you had it projected. I'm not sure. Is Amina still on the call? She received it already and she was projecting. Ah, I got it. Okay, give me a sec. I'll present it now. Now I've got it.
Okay.
Wandisile, we should actually have said ladies first. Dr. Mbovuma should have gone first.
True, true. It's always a strategic move.
This is the first time we've got so much glitch.
Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
It's
Okay.
there
Yes,
now.
thank
Fine.
you.
Right. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you so much. We'll be sharing a presentation from the point of view of the city, the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality, which is one of the 2 metros in the Eastern Cape. The presentation provides the profile of the city, priorities, our response to COVID, for an example, the economy, that's our second priority, through our economic recovery plan that we're busy executing at the stage. Talks to some LED interventions that we've made as a city, and indeed it talks to township economic development. Next. Next slide. So then in profiling the city, it's important just to capture exactly what are we doing in terms of our mission. We aim at providing opportunity to everyone in the city, investor, citizen, anyone who comes to the city. We have values such as ensuring that there's clean governance, stop corruption, create jobs for our people, and generally improve service delivery. That's the core of our objective. That's the core of our deliverable. The end state is that vision that's outlined there. It also includes innovation. We want to be a city that's known to be innovative, excellence in service, and a destination of choice, really. The brand promise that we are ascribed to, one city, one future, and this is anchored around 6 pillars: a safe city, city of opportunity, and many other things that we subscribe to. Thank you. Next slide. The key performance areas, as I mentioned earlier, the priority for us is service delivery, ensuring that there's transformation in regards to the economy, local economic development, there's financial sustainability and viability. In other words, the city is healthy in terms of finances, but there's also good governance and public participation, and we do this through our IDP, Integrated Development Plan. Next slide. The city is demarcated as such. We've got 60 wards, and that map outlines those wards. Thank you. That's just a brief profile of the city in terms of population, number of informal settlements. We've worked hard to reduce those. The capital budgets that we have in executing some of our major projects, operating budget, and where we are in terms of revenue. Those that are disadvantaged indigent households, 45% of those. So there's quite a high level of dependency. Those stats should give you an economic data that is quite useful in profiling any city. Next. The GDP, the contribution is 34.6% towards the Eastern Cape. We are the economic hub of the province, mainly because of our automotive sector and other sectors. We've got the best trading platforms, and we do contribute 2.6% towards the South African GDP. There has been decline, of course, because of the economic shocks that we felt, particularly because of COVID. And you see that there's been a decline in the city itself in terms of economic output, and indeed for the city and the Republic. Next slide. So in terms of our financial sustainability, we are at the status, we are stable. That's where we are. We have a positive cash position of 3.2 billion in the current financial year. A liquidity position is 1.9 to 1. And the Moody's rating agency has said that we've got a positive credit record. And that's critical to look at, because then it tells you that at least the city is being governed as it should. There's proper governance systems in place, and there's adherence to all matters that relate to finance. Next slide. So I did mention earlier that we have three priority areas that we're focusing on: COVID-19, its impact thereof, and we've developed a comprehensive recovery plan that I'll discuss later to deal with this, the impact of COVID, because it impacts directly on our businesses, SMEs, and indeed the economy of the city. We've got a drought. It's been with us since 2015. The dam levels are really at 10.33%. You'd recall that Western Cape was hit with drought at some point. That's where we are as a city. We have allocated budget to respond directly to this challenge. And we have measures that we've put in place that will support that budget. Political stability. You know that there's a new system of governing in terms of municipalities. We are one of the cities that are affected by this, but there has been political stability for some time in the city. Next slide. So that's the short-term drought interventions that I was mentioning earlier. The budget there of 363 million has been allocated to deal with this drought challenge, because South Africa really is a dry country. So you need infrastructure in place to harvest the water. Water catchment areas, they need infrastructure, they need maintenance and so on. That's what we're busy doing. But over and above this, we're engaging the communities, creating awareness on the importance of saving water. We've engaged professional services to help us with the repair of leaks, and we've lost a lot of water through this. Those are some of the things that we're doing to deal with this priority that I've mentioned. The economy of the city, you'll see that I've mentioned earlier that we're the economic hub, followed by the Buffalo City. That's where we are. And we were prone to really grow before COVID-19, pre-COVID-19. We were hit hard by COVID, and there's minus growth now. But this is where we're sitting because of the advanced and developed economy of the city. We contribute significantly towards the GDP of the province, followed by Buffalo City, of course. That's the breakdown of the sectors that you would find. You would realize there that manufacturing features prominently. That's the automotive sector that I referred to earlier. Community service, that's the work that government does. The finance sector is quite prominent. And that's just the contribution. We do not have much of mining. That's the least contributor to our GDP. And indeed agriculture, but agriculture has to be understood in the context of it being responsible for some of the manufacturing, particularly as it relates to food manufacturing. So agriculture features prominently there. You might know that we are enveloped by the Sarah Batman District Municipality, which offers raw material. We process those, and we've got a very advanced platform to do secondary agricultural production, and therefore you would look at manufacturing and you'll see that agriculture does contribute significantly there. The economic recovery plan that I've mentioned, there is a framework in place, the outcomes of which are to ensure that we support industry to trade and investment. We implement catalytic projects on the ground, which I'll talk to later. We do enterprise development and support SMEs, township economic development, alleviate poverty through some of our intervention, and contribute significantly in the infrastructure or built environment of our city. That's the outcome of the framework. That's what we're busy executing at this stage. To show that we are committed and we're serious about economic recovery, we have allocated 22 million rands It's a year, an annum budget that we get to allocate to EDTA, economic development, tourism and agriculture. And that budget goes through to SME development, the work that we do in retaining some of our investors here, securing new investors and so on. That money goes towards this. It's allocated to do all of those things to ensure that we revive the economy. We have over and above this put away 2.5 million to give to investors as incentives. We've got an incentive policy that we execute, and that those incentives come handy to any, be it a current investor or a new investor that wants to expand, a current investor that wants to expand, a new investor that wants to come to the city. Not only do we offer facilities, but we also offer incentives that would assist in rates, discounted rates, and many other things that we do through that package of incentives. We've put away 8 million rands to assist SMEs who have suffered. They've been hard hit by COVID, as we all know. But we've also partnered with strategic partners such as VWSA, Volkswagen South Africa, the BE Trust, the university, and many others to put together a fund that will assist SMEs who are mainly located in our township areas. We've identified catalytic projects that are going to assist us with our assets, the current assets that we have as a city, and we've put together an item that is going to assist us in this regard to repackage the project that we mentioned, and we've put away 16.2 million to do this. We're at a stage of implementation as we speak, where we will then revive the economy, looking at our current assets, the resorts that we have, the projects that we had wanted to execute, such as the waterfront and many others that will create jobs. We've ensured the implementation of our EME policy, which targets SMEs in the construction sector. What we have done as a city to approve a policy, 6% of any work. For instance, we're going to spend 1 billion rands on infrastructure, construction, and so on. 30% go to SME. So we've ring-fenced that amount. But we appointed a socio-economic consultant to ensure we implement, because we've got various directorates which have certain budgets which then should adhere and comply to the 30% set aside. We do this through our supply chain processes, of course. Agents, 3 million of which projects yearly. Next slide. Further to this, partner with strategic partners, Mandela, as I've mentioned, national treasures, those that are outlined there. I won't go into the detail, but every partner that we partner that the World Bank has reported that in many ways, townships and informal sector of South Africa are similar to slums. However, they are unique because they are not fully urban, lying somewhat in limbo, unlike other slums, they are geographic distance from urban opportunities and urban economic centers. So our role is to ensure that we link townships to the mainstream economy. So that's what the World Bank observed in 2015. It hasn't changed much, and we need to do work around this. Next slide. That's just a snapshot of what we have in terms of data and numbers. If you see there's high dependency rates, high unemployment rates. All of these are mainly located in our townships. I just took a few townships, a few words to illustrate to you the challenges that we faced. High unemployment rates, as I say, high dependency rates, low income. That's the character of our townships. Next slide. The survey that was done told us that more than 60% of people that are found in our townships under the 35 years old, under the age of 35 years. Less than 30% of them have completed grade 12, and many other statistics that we are working with, because we need to be informed by something, by data, by information, reliable information, before we can put in place interventions. So that's just a summary of what these surveys have produced. Next slide. So it's a huge challenge, and some of these challenges, they always go and affect entrepreneurs. And economic development, tourism and agriculture is focused on developing and supporting entrepreneurs. Those are some of the challenges. There's a myriad of challenges, but in the main, they need infrastructure, skills, access to finance, ICT as part of infrastructure, which is what we'll discuss later. They need all kinds of things. Those are the challenges that those entrepreneurs are faced with as we speak. Yes. Some of the challenges, again, as I mentioned, market access, information and data, market information, many other challenges that these township entrepreneurs face, uniquely so. Next slide. These challenges again, legislation that's not allowing for us to engage directly with these township entrepreneurs, be able to procure as government directly. There's legislation that doesn't allow for this, and many other challenges that the township entrepreneur faces. Next slide. The interventions. We currently implement the township economic revitalization policy. From a policy point of view, we're trying to ensure that there's appropriate legal and regulatory framework to allow us to intervene. We promote manufacturing and productive activities, access to markets, promote entrepreneurship, finance, and investment in the township directly. And we promote innovation, which is part of the reason why we want to have this discussion with you today. Next slide. In terms of the interventions, as I mentioned, sector development is a key subdirectorate within ETTA, and that subdirectorate implements the following. To assist cooperatives, we supply and provide cooperatives with equipment, facilities, training, coaching, information linked to access, linked to markets, access to finance. We provide trade permits to our informal traders. We provide them with facilities. We rezone areas. We've done so in many township areas of our city, including, for instance, in Ziabuya, Dwesi. That's what we have done. We've invested a lot of money there. We invest a lot of money in our enterprise development center that are located in the townships, which I will talk to. We've got programs that are targeted towards youth, young entrepreneurs. We have provided those young entrepreneurs with containers and many other interventions to assist them with their businesses. We focus on the automotive sector. We've implemented programs in townships to ensure that there's inclusivity in those particular sectors where there's none. As I mentioned earlier, we are busy renovating and rehabilitating our enterprise development centers, but we've got specific programs in our one-stop shop in Kwantu Towers where we incubate SMEs specifically. And iHub is doing that work with us. Very important work that they do. The SKBC that I mentioned is the one that implements the 30% set aside. So we have a one-stop shop where our SMEs can come through and we engage with them and we offer these packages that I've mentioned now. We've got initiatives located in the townships, such as the tourism township development initiative that we have, and we are going to implement, we've started doing so, the catalytic projects that I've mentioned earlier. Next slide. Coming to the discussion at hand, what do we want to implement? And we've started work on this because we've got a deliverable in our economic recovery plan in the implementation thereof. We've got a deliverable called Smart City there. We want to establish township-based ICT hubs. We'll be working very closely with iHub. The reason why we want to do this, we want to ensure there's effective communication between the metro and the communities, improve service delivery, accessibility for young people to skills development, access to online job opportunities, and we want to foster a culture of innovation in local communities. Next slide. The rationale behind this is that we've identified a need to develop these ICT hubs to provide business support to SMEs. I've mentioned earlier that we've got enterprise development centers located in townships, but they need infrastructure, they need ICT, they need all kinds of things to enable them to be competitive and amongst other things. And so these buildings are there. We've done work with iHub to assess the readiness, the preparedness of these buildings to host such a ICT hub. And they are scattered across the city. And the assessment have been done, as I mentioned. Next slide. The planned activities that would be in these hubs: ICT skills development programs, including coding, data engineering, robotics, etc. Business incubation services for at least 10 startup companies, which we are targeting. There's companies already there. For an example, in Fear Plus, there are 2 companies that are in the food sector, delivery and food sector. During hard lockdown, they had to create an app to deliver in townships. Innovative young people, they did that. They are now linked to Uber Eats. It's part of those things that we do, but they are located in townships. They're delivering now as we speak in townships. Food is being ordered and they deliver. So those are the kinds of things we're talking about practically that we want to do as a city. Want to provide free Wi-Fi connectivity. Want to start with the centers that I've mentioned. Want to create a digital platform for community engagement, because we engage with communities. Our IDP instructs us to do so, to engage, consult. Next slide. The cloud-based social engagement platform, that's what we want to create, a practical tool that we can use to interact with our communities, with our businesses, with the entrepreneurs, so that we can interface with these and offer our support packages, training and skills development towards the entrepreneurs, towards the communities. Next slide. So that's just the mapping of these enterprise development centers. As I mentioned earlier, we've done work already with iHub. We've assessed them. We've allocated budget to implement. We're going to come up with a specific case study now, business case pattern, so that we're able to implement that which is viable. But if you see the map, you will see that they touch on every corner of our city. Next slide. And I thank you.
Thank you very much for that informative presentation. I trust the audience got value out of it and really benefited. Thank you, Ms. Makwaba. Really, we greatly appreciate your time and the insight that you've provided to the actual audience in this webinar. And if you look at it, it ties in very much. In fact, it was meant for you to start first because it ties in with the IAB initiatives, what Daryl Dennis, Mr. Daryl Dennis is busy with. If you look at what the IAB stands for, it's about integrity, innovation, and inspiration. And a lot of the initiatives that you shared ties in with what Mr. Daryl Dennis is busy with. So by now, I've already, sorry, we had some issues at the beginning, but I would now like to end you, and Daryl, I will present your slides. I do have them to avoid any glitches. So give me a sec, I just need to download it. But it's basically to tie in, and Mr. Dennis has got over 28 years of experience in this ITC sector. He understands the technology space, he understands government intimately. So I think, chairing and leading this IAB organization is the person that understands and knows what the community needs. Give me a sec, let me just.
It's ready.
Is it ready? Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Amina. So I hand you now to Mr. Daryl Dennis to take you through his presentation.
Thank you very much, Shireen. I'm glad you didn't give a whole breakdown as to my CV. It would sound like an obituary, so thank you very much. If we can go to the next slide, please, I'd appreciate that. So, ladies and gents, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable... Okay, go one back. Yeah. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development recognizes that the spread of information and communication technology and the global interconnectedness has great potential to accelerate human progress, to bridge the digital divide, and to develop what is known as knowledge societies, as does scientific and technological innovation. Next slide. Now we ask ourselves the question, what are sustainable information and communication technology, ICT environments? And for all intents and purposes, it's an information and communication technology for the sustainable development. It shows how ICT as an enabler for all spheres of development can help innovate business processes and operations and provide faster integration of new technologies into business systems. Next slide. Now I think on everyone's mind is, everyone talks about digital divide and talks about ICT as an enabler. And I thought it prudent for me just to give my definition, if you like, of what that means. So ICT enables economic growth by broadening the reach of technologies such as high-speed internet, mobile broadband, computing. Expanding these technologies itself creates growth, and the fact that technologies make it easier for people to interact and make workers more productive creates additional benefits. Next slide. The township economy, as per part of our talk this evening, and it talks to what Mr. Wandisile Makwaba said earlier. I think fundamentally the central challenge for governments and civil society particularly is how to provide, number one, the promotion and the protection of what is known as indigenous knowledge systems. And the South African government has placed a great degree of emphasis on the development of indigenous knowledge systems, IKS, policies and legislation, which will significantly protect, develop and promote IKS. And this would help improve the livelihood and economic well-being of the indigenous and local communities by ensuring equitable and fair benefit sharing. Next slide. Excuse me. We then ask ourselves the question as to what are the social benefits of ICT? And for me, it's really the impact of ICT infrastructure on social businesses cannot be understated. It has made social impact affordable, social impact scalable, and it enables new ways to connect to and engage with local communities, which is a key characteristic of social business. Next slide. Digital skills is the buzzword in globally and obviously on the African continent. And what does this essentially mean when we talk digital skills? Number one, it provides new ways of working. And I think the pandemic has clearly elevated the importance of technology and how to utilize that. It also advances technology and it provides new ways of working, like we are doing right now, doing this webinar from from our homes and elsewhere. And fundamentally, businesses that embrace these changes will reap the benefits of a highly satisfied workforce who are keen to collaborate, communicate, or create using tools that allow them to do their jobs more efficiently. Next slide. So let's talk about the young innovators and the challenges they face. So while the pandemic has certainly brought into sharp focus the potential of innovation to curb the ongoing challenges faced by young people, young innovators still face many challenges. There are those who have been fortunate to enter the market, are failing to increase their incomes through developing distinctive, high-value products and services. And they instead are caught up in a constant struggle to survive. Many more are still struggling to access capital and credit to participate competitively in the market. Bureaucratic and costly regulatory hurdles also hamper business registration and formalization, forcing young entrepreneurs to operate in their backyards far away from the formal points of trade where they would have access to potential clients. And young innovators in the township specifically face even more severe challenges. Surveys also show that among other challenges, small township enterprises are disproportionately burdened by onerous administrative procedures because they do not have the dedicated capacity of established companies to deal with red tape. Next slide. Shireen, next slide. So let's just talk around the Nelson Mandela Bay iHub, who I represent here this evening. And our role, for all intents and purposes, is the following. It's to mobilize knowledge owners across various communities, assist those who are in the ICT application space, and if need be, refer those to organizations like the CSIR, universities, the Department of Science and Technology, etc., etc. It's also for us to provide incubation services and facilities which involve pre-screening processes, business support systems, which talk to mentorship. We have a relationship with an organization known as the Innovator Trust that do that for us from a mentorship perspective. Technology support, market access, market exposure, and seed funding to assist the entrepreneurs to progress through the different phases of their business cycles up to the commercialization stage. Next slide. Shireen, next slide. Shireen.
Amina, sorry about that, Daryl.
We're on the next slide.
No, okay. So we've formed, I don't know if this is the next slide. Can you just go one back, please, Amina? I just want to make sure, unless I sent you the incorrect slide.
This
pack.
was the one you were on,
Oh.
and then we moved to here.
Okay, so go back, please, if you could go back to the previous one. So colleagues, the Nelson Mandela Bay Innovation Hub, in an attempt to address these impediments, if you like, we've have strategic partnerships that we have embraced over the last couple of months and years to really make the end goal a reality. And some of the partnerships and initiatives we've been party to, I'll outline in the next few slides. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. That's not coming up correct. Okay. So one of the partnerships, which is a very exciting one, which is a regional. Now you're going too fast. The previous slide, please. I mean, I don't know. Guys, the slides are not coming up as they are on the presentation. The slide before this. Anyway, while we try and get to the previous slide, one of the initiatives or partnerships we've effectively been party to and fortunate to manage this is the RIMP project, which is the Regional Innovation Networking Platform, which is fundamentally to drive innovation in the Eastern Cape. So it's about establishment of a competitive, inclusive, multi-stakeholder innovation platform in the Eastern Cape province, creation of a platform for innovators and okay, can we just leave it at this slide, please? So the Regional Innovation Networking Platform, the IHub has partnered with various stakeholders in the Eastern Cape to establish RIMP for innovators and industry to work together towards the commercialization of new innovative products. The platform is aimed at establishing a collaborative relationship between institutions, business developers, government, private sector, and innovators. The program was funded in 2020 of March, but due to the pandemic, the recruitment of innovators was only done in July and onboarding in September of 2020. Next slide. While we get to the next slide, you'll see at the bottom of this slide, our partners in this initiative is the Department of Science and Technology, CSIR, Rhodes University, Nelson Mandela Bay University, the iHub, Propeller, which is another innovation hub in Port Elizabeth, the Kakadu Development Agency, the Kucha Industrial Development Zone, East London Industrial Development Zone, and very recently, the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber. Next slide, please. So the objectives of RIMP, I'm going to try and go through this very quickly, is really about promoting innovation through partnerships. We are partners with the like of educational institutions, government institutions and the likes, create a conducive environment, enabling entrepreneurs with innovative products to take it to market. And the combination of partners that we have allows us to do this in a very short space of time, taking into account the experience of our partners in their specific fields. Next slide. Here we go with the founding partners, which I did talk to. Next slide, please. In addition to the RIMP, we also have other partnerships that really talk to the promotion of entrepreneurship. One of those is the IAB has partnered with an entity called the Viare, whose core capability is the use of its enterprise digital platform for workforce skills transformation and technology services. They've successfully developed a scalable platform that completes the value chain of identifying talent, rapid and targeted skilling, and entrance into a productive job ecosystem. A new model that scales quickly is required, and this must reach as many South Africans as possible, even in the underdeveloped areas where it is most needed, which talks to the township economy. The use of technology to achieve this cannot and should not be questioned, which is why the IHub and the VR have agreed to a partnership that works to develop digital skills through a 12-month, what is known as the Global Virtual Entrepreneurship, GVA, for the youth of the Eastern Cape in townships being in Umtata, Duncan Village, Uitenhage, Alloway North, so the breadth of the Eastern Cape. The goal is not just to increase the skills, but to put them in practice by addressing real-world challenges through work experience opportunities presented by the GVA program. Next slide. Next slide, please. There seems to be a lag, Shireen.
Yeah, there's a lag on the network.
Can we go to the next slide? Perhaps I should go off camera then to assist. Yeah, it's still on the same slide. Can we try and go to the next slide, please? Then another initiative or partnership we've embarked upon over the last couple of weeks is with a company called Blake. So the IHub and Blake are desirous of creating a joint venture which serves to leverage the iHub's platform network together with the Blake technology and contact center expertise, BPO, to create a distributed network of contact centers, infrastructures, and capabilities. These contact center sites can be utilized to deliver services on behalf of local governments, meaning namely municipalities, local SMEs, and ultimately even private sector clients. It is envisaged that the venture will deliver a competitive contact center solution, leveraging off the best of breed of technology and methodology to recruit, train, and employ unemployed youth to serve our target markets and audiences. Potential services will range from inbound or outbound sales, post-sale services and onboarding, through to customer service and ultimately to revenue enhancement through collections facilitation. Next slide. So, colleagues, and I try to reduce the presentation as best I can. I think for us to achieve this holistically, it really requires a full investment and commitment is required. And that's purely because innovation does not happen in a vacuum. It is enabled. The devastation of COVID-19 to our broader economy is clear and will be even clearer in months to come. The conversation we should be having now is where they are plotting opportunities for innovation and positioning young people in particular to lead our economic resurgence now and beyond COVID-19. The pandemic is forcing us to rethink a lot in this regard, and with the right investment and right policies, young people's contribution to our economic and social well-being can prove catalytic. The ability to be innovative and competitive demands much more than simplistic plans. it demands a full investment and commitment. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you, Daryl. I trust the audience got value out of that and also extracted some valuable information in terms of what the IHUB value add to the market, to the industry, to the economy is, and the difference that they can make. It's clear this pandemic has brought some delays and some different mindset, as I mentioned earlier on. With COVID-19, organizations, large corporates, every one of us, including us as individuals, had to have a mindset shift, right? Whoever thought we'd be doing webinars via virtual mechanism? We always had the face-to-face, the interaction, and we humans generally like to interact. Thank you, Daryl. Really appreciate it. Now we save the best for last, they say. Dr. Stella does not have a presentation for us. She'll be talking through in terms of what she's going to be proposing and the value from her side. But just to give you, for me, Dr. Stella is a lady on a mission. She is a specialist in the township and value to the economy. She plays a critical role in making, these initiatives that we are busy discussing today possible. And Dr. Stella actually has been part of the board of CEDA. She's also part of the Gauteng Smart Cities projects. So we welcome you today, Dr. Stella, and we're looking forward to hear what you have to say. And thank you, audience, for your patience and for your time. And I'm really hoping that you guys are extracting value from this webinar. I now hand you over to Dr. Stella Bavuma.
Thank you very much, and greetings to everyone. I should have advised you that we always start with ladies first. Okay, I seem to have disappeared there. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Fantastic, fantastic. We seem to be having issues with connectivity today, but nonetheless, I was just pulling your leg to say you should have started with the lady, you should have known best that ladies first. So yeah, I don't do presentations, although I'm an academic by profession, but I prefer to have conversation, to have us to talk about these issues that are really pertinent and very important to our society today. But let me start by declaring who I am. I'm Stella. I'm from the township. I grew up in the township. I know that people like to say you're a township girl. I'm not a township girl. I grew up in the township. I was raised in the beautiful province Limpopo. Grew up in a township called Namahale. But I think what I wanted to really share with the audience and my fellow panelists here is that, of course, one finds it very interesting that as soon as we hear the mention of the word township in South Africa and wherever you go, it immediately sparks mental images of poverty, or often townships, in other people's mind, it invokes images of underdeveloped and racially segregated areas. Even after 1994, when we became a democratic country, you still see when you introduce yourself to say, I'm from the township, and people think, okay, she must be poor. Okay, she must not be educated. Listen, that's not the case. Even though while, we acknowledge that this may be very much of the truth, because the township economies of the country are the key focus of economic development, and they are part of South Africa's economy. You know, we don't have a separate economy or this economy and the other economy. We are an inclusive economy, and I think that is very important that we talk about. And again, when we mention the population in South Africa, you know, it includes the township population. You know, based on the current projections, we know that the population will continue to grow until 2082, reaching just over 80 million people, slightly declining the rest of the century. However, that also I want to indicate that it includes the township population. Let me tap into the current state where we are today. And I think it's very important that we talk about this and we face it, and we are very, polite about what is currently happening in terms of the digital divide. We cannot, exclude ourselves from the realities that we are in an equal society. Of course, the pandemic has exposed, the brutal inequality of South Africa, especially the townships, because more than 2 decades after the end of the white minority rule, South Africa still remains one of the most unequal countries in the world. And I think with urban areas starkly divided along the racial lines. So, it's very important to say, as South Africans, when we took to the streets to protest, the police brutality in townships in an echo of Black Lives Matter protest, even in the United States, we are also, are seeing people in the townships echoing that township business matter or township economy matter. Firstly, when it comes to South Africa, the truth, as I always advocate, it's never a one size fits all. If you look at, the localities of where we are, where our businesses are operating, we have to generously admit that we are an equal, country. Of course, one would ask a question to say, what is township economy? What is the definition of township economy? And there has been literature that's been written by quite a lot of authors who try to define this economy to say, this is what it means. When I think about a study done by the World Bank on South African township, they've indicated that if you look at the economy combined, it's estimated at about 100 billion. And this was in 2014. You look at other authors who have also indicated that, we cannot dispute the fact that the township economy provide massive turnover on a weekly basis. And they also said that majority of the local and national retailers, when encountered for, you look at about 800 million a month. And this is from the township economy. There's quite massive literature that we can quote when we look at this township economy. Of course, there's no way that I will not talk about the township SMEs economy, because prior to 1994, we know that it was not included in the government policies because of them being disregarded by the apartheid government, and in line with the political disinterest, SMEs were wiped off, from the agenda of the business schools or the universities or even the government itself. So definitely we know that we come a long way and we have made progress, but the reality is we have to face the fact that even after 1994, larger enterprises are still seen more likely as potential enablers of employment creation or economic growth, which are mainly, if you look at them, sort of your white owned and operated in the city or in better areas. Of course, we do acknowledge that we've made differences. There is quite movement that has happened. But the truth is, if you look at where we're coming from again, and I always like to give the historical background before I go into my space of ICT or information technology, so that we understand that technology as an enabler, Didi mentioned that it is an enabler. It's not like technology is going to solve many of our problems. We have to acknowledge, where we come from. And before we talk about the 4th industrial revolution, we also have to understand that where are we in terms of our ICT infrastructure? And I know that the South African government initiated the Institute of Small Business Development, which was then called the BDC in the early 1980s. And this was in order to provide support to SMEs.
Dr. Stella, sorry,
Yes.
I apologize for interjecting, but before you go into the ICT component, is a gentleman, Ian, actually positioned a question. He said, Dr. Stella, how to balance the consumption and production in townships so that the means of production can be owned by the consumer demographic? And he's from the Center of Entrepreneurship at UJ Soweto. So he's asking.
Fantastic. That's definitely my colleague, and thanks for that question. I think if we talk about balancing, you know, we also have to look at, if you look at the opportunities that information and communication technology, and that is ICT, offers, is that it offers us a great opportunity to discuss the biggest challenges that anyone in the digital industry faces and how can we overcome them. Of course, it offers great opportunities to discuss, you know, the biggest challenges, such as, you know, our ICT ecosystem. I think, you know, maybe to respond to that, I would say we need to look at it as we have entered into a new ecosystem where ICTs are less, you know, about optical fiber. In my world, we talk about the zettabyte, the satellite, the 5G tablets, the smartphones, or whatever that you want to mention when we talk about ICT. But I think for me is we need to look at this ecosystem as an ICT that is rather about streamlining government processes, you know, bringing education to the neediest people in order to create national cohesion. We need to look at inclusiveness. We need to look at economic growth, empowering women and youth, and, you know, extending health services to rural and remote areas and to the most vulnerable strata of our society. And the most important thing as well for me is facilitating the trade and business through e-commerce, you know, facing the challenges of urbanization through smart cities. This has been mentioned, and looking at the climate change and saving lives when natural disasters strike. You know, at the end of the day, I still advocate that all of this above is an ecosystem where ICTs are just about the people. You know, even if we go and look at the policies and so forth, if they are not addressing the reality on the ground about the people, then we are not going to survive. I think to answer that in a nutshell for me is we are at a turning point where every one of us, and this includes stakeholders, government, economic sectors, ICT service providers, you know, so the Center for Small Business Enterprises, academias in universities, research communities, consumers, civil society. We need to change the way we think. And we also need to think about how do we interact with each other in order to create this enable ecosystem. You know, I think at the end of the day is we all need to not only think innovation, but more importantly, to innovate our way of thinking. And I'm going to end it there, because if I start with ICTs and the disparities within our societies, I will not stop. So otherwise, I was setting the scene. You know, setting the scene to say, you know, let's talk about the realities on the ground. Let's be real. And that's why I don't want to do presentation. It's for us to say, what is the reality on the ground? What are the challenges that we are facing in terms of technologies that we're talking about? I mean, there's quite a lot of noise. You know, I come from the University of Johannesburg that advocates the fourth industrial revolution. However, I also say that what is the reality on the ground? What does it mean for a young person in high school? What does it mean for a first year that I'm admitting in my department to study information technology? Do they understand what are the solutions that we're bringing on the table to address our societal challenges? So I think, you know, it's very important that we look at that. And if we are not going to work together, we are still going to create these disparities amongst ourselves in industry, government, academia, everybody doing their own thing and not creating this one ecosystem. And it's just a waste of time. We'll continue talking, we'll continue having these policies, and nothing is going to be implemented on the ground. So I hope I've set the scene, and I'm very much happy to take questions and hear from everybody that attended. Thank you very much, Cherise.
Thank you, Dr. Stella. I can hear your passion. It oozes out, really. It's just amazing to see the effort, the input that you are putting towards this. Really, it's phenomenal. And thank you. Clearly your passion came out in what you're doing, and it's meaningful to you. And I think that's what the audience want to hear and see, that there's genuinely somebody who cares and who wants to make that difference and impact, to this economy and to our topic today specifically. Audience, I know we're running very late. We're 30 minutes behind, and apologies, we had some glitches along the way with the technology, the presentations, and thank you for your patience. We're now going to move into the panel discussion. Let me just share my screen. So the next is the roundtable discussion. So we've got, the different speakers, and we're now going to pose questions through to them. And, also please keep it interactive. You've come on board to this webinar, you're expecting something out of this. So we want to try and keep it as interactive as possible. So we have prepared a list of questions that we want to pose to the panelists. So in the panel will be the 3 speakers that we had today. And Dr. Stella, seeing that you were the last speaker and your passion oozed out, I'd like to pose the first question to you. Are you seeing from an economic transformation perspective, what are you seeing from a transformation perspective in the townships?
Thanks, Sharice, for that question. I think we have to first maybe look at the question of what we are hearing up there, and I'm talking about president, the commander-in-chief of this country. My question has always been, is digitization a blessing or a curse in the township or the rural communities? And I'm saying this in terms of connectivity. I heard the president when he said that and I quote, digital transformation has to be harnessed to change the way we live, learn, work, and govern, a close quote. And that's what he said. And I do not doubt that he included township and rural communities of South Africa when he spoke about digital transformation, no doubt about that. But townships and rural areas should not be viewed as strangers to the digital revolution that is currently making waves across the globe. I think the economic growth of the country at least depends or either includes all of us. Technologies such as the 4th industrial revolution that we're hearing all about, have in one way or the other touch base with the rural and the township communities, and are seen to have kind of the potential to develop and improve the social, the economic, and the environmental condition. But what we are experiencing, all of us, it's an era of, major technological changes led by the digital revolution. So these technological changes are not necessarily new, but, rather some are seen to be advancing from the hardware and the software and are more digital platform driven by artificial intelligence. So I don't think we should be shocked that we are now into a digital divide. The reality is this has been happening since my time when I joined the university. Perhaps an interesting part to share with the audience is that I came from Limpopo, came to study in the same department where I'm head of department, started as a student, leading the same department, and I have experienced the same things that we're talking about today as the digital, the digital divide. But let me close by just saying that COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the unbalanced distribution of digital technologies, where many sectors have shifted their way of doing business or either their strategy to accommodate this shifts. What we've seen is that various organizations now embraced working remotely, shifting operations on digital platforms. Whether you like it or not, you have to start thinking of, how do I digitize? How do I talk to my audience? I was doing SMEs training during the recess holidays of the university, and speaking to many SMEs, most of them are still asking the question to say, where do I start? What do we talk about when we say digital transformation and digital strategy? I mean, how do you talk to somebody who owns a spaza shop about adopting technology, the 4th industrial revolution, when they are not even having money to afford the cost of data? That is also a pain in the thorn in this country. So I'll leave it there for my fellow panelists to come in as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Daryl, you want to, sorry.
Yes, yes.
You would like to add, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And I think what Dr. Stella has said is fundamental to how we address the disparities that we as a country or as an economy experience. But I think for me, critical to the whole digitization process and all these fancy technological words that are being bandied around, it comes down to an educational. How does one, and to Dr. Stella's point, how does one talk about the fourth industrial revolution to people who are not even aware as to what that means or what that essentially means in the bigger scheme of things? So for me, it's really an educational exercise from a grassroots level, where we articulate as best we can in layman's terms what this means. Because in the absence of that, we're not going to get anywhere close to addressing the digital divide. We can talk all these fancy terms, but in the absence of people understanding what this means in reality, we're really not going to remedy the current situation we find ourselves in. Thank you.
100%, Daryl, I agree with you. And I agreed with Dr. Stella as well. Education plays a pivotal role in this whole process, and to Dr. Stella's point around making a difference and turning the actual situation around. We have to look at education. We have to look at and look at this whole COVID situation as flipped us around, right? It's brought a different maturity level. And one of the biggest as well also have to come in and help support organizations and help support government and how we can turn and bring into townships the value that they're looking for around the digital topic that we are talking about now.
And just lastly, I know my colleague, Mr. Makwabe, wants to comment too, but just in addition to what I've said, I think it's incumbent on government agencies to be a bit more forthright and proactive. And I'll use two government agencies who really need to get out of the starting blocks. And that's the likes of Broadband Infraco and Centec. Because connectivity is fundamental to do business in this new normal and this new economy we find ourselves in. And in the absence of connectivity, no mama or entrepreneur or whoever in the township has an inclination of what is happening around him or her. So once again, connectivity becomes pivotal to how one addresses people in townships becoming active participants in the mainstream ICT economy.
Absolutely.
And indeed, Sharon, Mr. Dennis touched on something I was going to say. Just to add to what he said now, I'll make a practical example, this connectivity issue. We were invited by SALGA, a South African Local Government Association, to try and incubate and assist SMEs through a program, FNB, First National Bank incubation program. And when we were busy preparing for this, one of the things, the sticking points was data connectivity. Some of these SMEs could not even afford, they didn't have the equipment and this and that. Now, it meant that they would not be able to access this incubation program, which is quite critical. Now, what Mr. Dennis is saying, connectivity is the basics of everything for us. Creating that conducive environment as a city to ensure that there's access is what we are saying, to reduce the burden, the cost of doing business, to ease the burden that is faced by these township entrepreneurs, even youth entrepreneurs. And therefore, we have to be deliberate about it. Beyond education, we have to implement practical programs that take the matters straight to the townships, straight to where our people are. And this is why I mentioned earlier, that when we have centers such as ones that ourselves and IHUB are going to collaborate now, implement the hub, the ICT hubs that I've mentioned, then we must take those programs there. We need to invest money into those centers, execute programs that are going to ensure that there's inclusivity. Our people are able to access, there's connectivity, because that's the basis of everything really. Thank you.
Mr. Makwabe, we have a question for you from the audience, right? From Karabo. His question is, how can an SME in the IoT water utility space like himself, who is based at the IHUB, get involved with the water saving initiative from the municipality? We have presented, but due to the red tape, access is delayed. And junior prodigy venture. So he's basically asking, how can an SME in the IoT water utility space like himself, who is based in the IHUB, get involved in water saving initiative from the municipality?
The direct answer would be, he must come, or she must come and engage me because we welcome such. And we've had, engagement of this sort, and with IHUB, because I've always collaborated with IHUB, I've always called in IHUB, so that we're able to structure the business case, we're able to ensure that it falls squarely into our processes. Remember, the municipality is governed by specific, pieces of legislation that talk to supply chain, that talk to our supply chain management processes. So when we understand what the solution is about, which clearly in this instance is going to support and assist the municipality, it's better to come and engage me directly. With IHUB, we can be able to solve, we can be able to come closer to this entrepreneur. Thank you.
Okay. I trust, Karabo, your questions were answered by Mr. Makwabe. Dr. Stella, we have a question posed to you. Is our basic education preparing rural learners for the 4IR? And is it enough being done by government, academia, and private sector to bridge the digital divide? And how can ordinary citizens participate in minimizing the divide? I'm not sure if you got that, Dr. Stella.
I got it loud and clear. I did speak about the ecosystem, and I think it's a very valid, valuable question. Of course, I did say that COVID-19 will leave many sectors in the world affected, and that does not exclude higher education. We are all feeling the presence of the pandemic as academic professionals, as citizens. You just cannot separate the two. It is a pandemic, The concern is the uncertainty itself and the reality on the ground. Like, I responded earlier to say, we just don't know when is the normal, because we just living in a very complex situation full of uncertainties. But just to respond to that is that, of course, in higher education, there's been quite a lot of efforts that has been made. But the pandemic landed at a time when huge efforts were being deployed to transform and improve the sector itself. But given our historical backgrounds of institutions of higher learning in South Africa, the sector has experienced its own share of challenges, such as, the historically disadvantaged universities that you have. And you also have, from the 26 public universities across all 9 provinces, we have witnessed that, it's not really about the health-related issue of what we're currently facing. The challenges were, protest against institutions such as, free access to education. We know that, the decolonization of higher education and the calls for removals of symbols, if you remember, from the apartheid past. But many institutions are now forced to look at how do we then, accommodate even the students in the rural or in the township, or those that are really struggling to connect. And again, it brings us back to the issue of the digital divide. you know, because in as much as it's kind of an annoying term for us to talk about, but the truth of the matter is all of these things have emerged as an illustration of an expanding frustration within the state of South Africa. You know, it's extreme inequalities again, it's widespread poverty, and it's huge youth unemployment. The social protest of communities, actions have been a feature of South African politics for many years. What we're seeing now, it might look like it's something that's new in our faces, but I mean, protest is something that we know. It's not our first major national wave that we have experienced, maybe in a different form, yes, but it's really not new. But I think maybe to respond to say, how do we then, make sure that we have everybody participate? It's the core thing. It's about addressing connectivity, and all is associations such as cost, because the biggest concern is the digital learning acceleration, which revolves around digital divide. You know, the digital divide problem in higher education, it's really not new, because it's just magnified by the pandemic itself. But, you know, as an academic, all I need to do is conduct a lecture now, and with my students being all over the provinces, and you have ones that are having fiber, that are easy to connect, and then you also have others that are telling you that, listen, I've got other socioeconomic challenges here, even though I can, access data, I can afford, but here's the issue that I'm facing. So it boils down again to ecosystem. We need everybody coming on board. We need everybody coming to address, this big monster that we are facing. I think the lack of inclusivity is still our nightmare. And the reality is that the representation of women as well, in STEM field, it's another issue that we need to face, because I cannot be proud to still say today, I'm the first Black HOD in the department, even after so many years of democracy. I think it's a pathetic statement to even be throwing such statements in today's age. And those things, we must talk about them, we must address them, we must talk to the male gender that are really occupying the seats, that are busy writing the policies and are not addressing our real issues. Because the truth is, the challenge that we are facing is bigger than one entity. And I don't think the government alone can solve this issue alone. So I'll just leave it there. Thanks. Over to you.
Darryl, okay, go for it, Darryl.
Thanks, Dr. Stella. I think also just historically, just the short period I've been in ICT, I think the challenge we have as a country, and I say this with respect and advisedly, we need a far more closer collaboration between two government departments and one government entity. And we need to see a far more closer working relationship between the Department of Communication and Digital Services, which is Stella Ndabeni-Abrams, and we need a closer working relationship with that department to address the township's economy with respect to connectivity. You essentially need those two ministries and SALGA around a table, and bring in the likes of Centec, Broadband Infraco, and others, and have representatives from higher institutions, UJ and other universities, because as Dr. Stella rightfully says, it can only work if it's a collaborative effort. It can only work if it's a collective effort. Because unfortunately, we're pulling in different directions, because everyone has different KPIs and everyone has different deliverables. And unfortunately, in that equation, the man on the street does not benefit, because he doesn't know who to go to. Who is the entry point? Who do I engage with? Do I engage with the provincial government of the Eastern Cape, or do I engage with my respective local authority? In my opinion, that is what is lacking. And if we can get that correct, I think our problems will be addressed and expedited and remedied in a lot quicker space of time. Thanks, Shireen.
Thank you.
If I may also come in there, Shireen, because Didi is just igniting me here. And I think we have to we have to acknowledge that the government is really pulling all its energy and effort to support SMEs. And I really want to take my hat off, in particular to the Ministry of Small Business, because I think there's quite a movement there. It's just that the challenges that we are facing are quite huge. And that's why I'm saying that people need to stop folding arms. And people, I'm talking about all the stakeholders that I've mentioned in the ecosystem, to come on board and say, this is what we need to assist in. And I'm talking about even the private sector. Banks are more comfortable with supporting larger enterprises. That's the reality. But if you look at the Gauteng provincial government, for example, between the year 2014 and 15, they supported about 17 billion of procurement from SMEs alone. And those kind of things, we must talk about them, because that's what the government is doing. And if you are an SME, you are listening today, you need to go to the website of the government, www.smemesa.org.za, and register your business. Because one of the challenges is that we also have young people who also have these issues of people folding arms and waiting for the government to come and save them. And I like what I've seen, with a young activist in Soweto during this looting, who was talking about saving the township economy. And for me, the voice was, saving ourselves, to say that we know that the stats are telling us that, the young people are affected by the joblessness. We know that the stats are also telling us that the high unemployment rate is ever increasing. But in his speech, Minister Khumbuza Ntshavheni said that the challenge is that we need to look at how do we support at least, the startups by 2024, with the focus on tech-driven companies. We need to work with various agencies and the structures and make sure that we have a coordinated a plan towards supporting the vision of 2030, which was adopted in 2019, by the way. And that program, consists of various programs, such as your manufacturing support programs, your Startup Nation, your Young Entrepreneur Support, She Trades, ZA, and I definitely know that Mr. Makwabe will know about those. So I am also appealing to our people to say, all of these things that we're talking about, that the government is also putting in place, we must also ask questions and participate in them. Because if you go to many communities now and you start asking them, and I'm referring back to my study from my PhD that, was looking at technology adoption by small businesses. And it was quite shocking to find that many of them have said that there's no support that the government is providing. But yet there's quite a lot of support that is out there. And it's a two-way traffic, in as much as we really see some of the challenges that we see from the government side. But I think we also need to take responsibility to say, with all of this effort, all of the support plans that have been provided, I also serve as a board member of CEDA. And I know that in the speech we spoke, the minister spoke about millions of rand, that has been transferred to the CEDAs and, to make sure that they support your programs such as your CEDA technology programs, through technology programs of CEDA responsible for various programs. But, Didi, the incubation and the digital hubs, where are the people to come on board to take those opportunities? You'll hear, I don't know, I'm not aware of this. So I think our people as well, from all corners of the country, they should tap in and participate in this economy that we're saying it's an inclusive economy. Thanks.
Absolutely, Dr. Stella. And I hope the audience took heed of what Dr. Stella shared in terms of that website, www.smeme.org.za. So please take advantage of that. Lungilo has asked a question, and I'm posing it to anyone in the audience who would like to answer. I have founded a company that looks at ensuring inclusive and innovation development within township economies through developing food and health enhancing products that uses indigenous crops. The greatest issue that we have realized is that there is no coordination between policymakers and public enterprise that are tasked when implementing policies. I believe that we need to be looking at the public enterprises and how information translates to the general societies. Should I repeat the question? Did you guys understood that or hear it?
If I understand correct, Shireen, the colleague who posed the question is saying there's a disjoint
Correct.
in what he's doing, and the regulatory framework is not conducive to deliver what he wants, and he wants to understand how, if I'm correct, how he can get to the next stage. I think it's an intricate process, and intricate in the sense that who is your go-to person? I mean, and Mr. Makwabe could possibly comment on this. If it's a township-based industry that, based on what he's saying, is really in the agro-processing or agricultural sector, I would think that an engagement with the Economic Development Directorate, which is Mr. Makwabe's portfolio, jointly with the iHub, we can then see how best we take what this individual has or gentleman has and how we take it to the next level, which essentially talks to the commercialization thereof. I would think that would be the point of departure. Mr. Makwabe?
I would agree, Mr. Ness, completely with your statement. And you see, when Dr. Bavuma was speaking, it was clear to me that there was a time where this conversation would have been seen as high-end, a bit elitist and so on. But with COVID, the new norm, we are forced to have these conversations. We are forced to implement these programs that I referred to earlier. We are forced to partner with your iHubs. We are forced to partner with any sphere of government, private sector, public entity, and so on. We're even forced to work with communities because they need the solutions. So the question that just came now immediately speaks to exactly your answer, that an engagement needs to be had, not only from the local government point of view, where we take the matter up ourselves, but supported by iHub, for an example, where we develop a fit for purpose solution for that particular entity. Because with every sector, you need to have such fit for purpose that solves innovatively the problems of that sector. If it's food, if it's the food manufacturing sector, logistics come into play as well. They work together, and so you need to have a solution that envelopes and comprehensively solves that problem.
And it talks to the regional innovation program that I referred to in my presentation, which is exactly set up for what this gentleman is currently experiencing. We have the relevant partners that make up that institution or partnership, universities, the municipality, the business chamber, and so forth. So the regional innovation networking platform was specifically set up to address this issue that this gentleman has raised. So Shireen, I would think, I mean, he's more than happy, I'm more than happy for him to engage with me directly, and we can then see how we plug him into this the RIMP program.
Fantastic. Thank you, Daryl. I really appreciate it. And Lungile, I hope you heard that. Also, please note, we will be sharing a copy of the broadcast and the presentations, so you will get a copy of it. And as Daryl mentioned, he's happy for you to connect with him directly, right? Daryl, also another question, not question, but information that Karabo is seeking. She said, can you kindly share where we can find more information about the iHub's virtual entrepreneurship program, apprenticeship program?
So if they're referring to the global apprenticeship digital skills program, and I don't know if it's Karabo asking, I'm told that there are quite a few Karabos on the school, but there's only one Karabo. The other Karabos, I think, are just logged in under her name. So,
yes,
so the program that they refer to, the correct Karabo, if I could use that word, would be in a position to share that information with whoever's posed the question. Alternatively, they can also make contact with me, as I did intimate in my presentation, we are in the beginning phases of initiating the Global Apprenticeship Program. So yeah, that person can make contact with the iHub. Any of my colleagues who are online, whether it be Dane Kobe or Karabo, Akona, or even myself, I'm happy to engage with that person.
Okay, fantastic. In fact, they are using, there's quite a few people joined on Karabo's personalized link. So perfect. Thank you, Daryl. Appreciate that. Karabo, I hope you received that message in terms of what Daryl shared. You're welcome, guys, to connect with him directly or his colleagues that are part of the IAM. And then, Dr. Stella, this question is posed to you, and I think we're going to wrap up. This would be the final question that we're looking at, because we have overrun from a timing perspective. Sorry, I just lost that question now. Okay, Dr. Stella, you've mentioned that the digital transformation is people-orientated and more service-driven. To all the panelists, what is government's appetite on adoption of e-governance? Is there a clear policy with clear guidelines and timelines in that regards, especially after my apologies, I've lost the question now.
Yeah, I think I can jump in.
After the period of COVID-19 pandemic, to enhance the inclusivity and growth with equity. Sorry, Dr. Stella.
Yeah, thanks very much, Shireen. I think if you want to direct the energy into the government, of course, I always say it's a two-way traffic. But for me, I think there is quite an appetite. We know that the president started the 4IR Commission, and the issue of e-governance. I mean, people talk about e-governance. E-governance is something that I've learned when I was doing my last year. It's not a new concept. But I think when we look at the government, they should really take probably the steps to maximize, an inclusive economy. In terms of the benefits of the fourth industrial revolution. I mean, look at implementing the robust policy frameworks for social inclusion programs in education to train more young women, in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. All of those things are very important. But again, if I have to shift it from their direction as well, is to say, we can also look at initiating retraining programs, that focused on increasing the presence of entrepreneurs in renewable, especially in township or rural areas. We can also look at rollout, of industrialization programs that will also promote youth advancement through a variety of affirmative action programs across all sectors. But for me, lastly, is the 4IR Commission, with key objectives of being to mainstream the gender of the industrial policies of the African countries. It's very important that we realign our labor laws and policies to the new realities of work, and to ensure that workers are protected from all the negative impacts of 4IR. Doesn't mean all of it, it's all good. There are also negative impacts, which I don't think is the purpose of this session, but it's extremely important. But because we're running out of time, Shireen, allow me to do my closing, because I will not do justice to myself and will be unable to sleep if I don't talk to the young women out there. I just want to talk to the young women in terms of their participation, because women, we are more vulnerable, not only because of the type of jobs that we are doing or we are designed to be doing, but also because of the gender inequalities within our housework divisions, education and health sector. It is important that as young women, we continuously learn. We have to be very aggressive in terms of updating our skills and making sure that in order to stay relevant, we are also in line with what's currently happening with this complexities that we're faced with. And there is a dire need for lifelong learning. which I always advocate and say, this lifelong learning will enable all of us to access all the learning opportunities. I mean, the pandemic has actually introduced many of us to the internet. You know, I'm communicating with my aunties in the village via WhatsApp videos. Some of them we are doing family meetings via Zoom. And it shows that, you know, we have the agility to adapt, because almost everything that has been developed in the 20th century workforce is being dismantled and reconstructed. And higher education is also not an exception. So as universities, we are definitely, from where I'm sitting, reevaluating our roles and also looking at how do we then participate to make sure that we grow to be in the future. And I'm really saying that women stand up and participate in this disparities. Wherever you are in the townships and in the economies, you are the ones who are going to look for the solutions to our societal problems. We cannot wait for the other gender to, you know, to develop the softwares that solve our problems. I always get nightmares when I hear the male gender saying that they are working on you know, softwares that will address gender issues. I'm like, how is that possible? You know, it's supposed to be us women who are coming up with this software applications. But I'll leave it at that. But I think I wanted to say that in particular for the young South African women, to say we need to really participate and be part of this economy and contribute to the inclusivity that we talk about. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Stella, for that inspiring closing. I agree, and I hope the women out there in the call have taken heed of Dr. Stella's advice. Participate, be part of something to make a difference. You know, because we're running out of time, I'm going to quickly hand over to our chairman who runs the PAICTA organization, Mr. Sanwabo. I'm handing over to you for closure.
Thank you very much, Shireen. I really appreciate everyone that has come in today to be part of this engagement. I think we will all agree that it was fruitful. I think it was really challenging. We've got a lot to take back and think about. I thank you very much, Dr. Stella. I fondly call it Dr. Stella, Osa Stella. Thank you, Mr. Makwabe. Thank you, Didi, as I fondly call you, Didi, Mr. Dennis. I think it is the information that has been shared. It is enlightening, it is informative, and it proves that in Nelson Mandela municipality, we've got the capacity, we've got the competency, we've got the will, and that is driving the objective and the mandate of the municipality to make a difference in the township economy through empowering people that don't have access to ICTs right now. And I'm going to copy quote unquote from Dr. Stella. In townships, there are people that have not adopted ICTs. There's people that are battling to adopt it. I think Mr. Makwabe has covered what they're going to spend on wireless connectivity, on infrastructure to enable digital hubs or digital centers for individuals to be able to go and be creative and innovative with the support of iHub. You know, iHub is a real good structure that is in our city. I think everyone needs to contact the iHub. They are people that are very professional, very competent, including the CEO that is leading the environment, that is very passionate about society or community development. I think from a PAICTA perspective, I'm going to say to you, it has been lovely being with you. But I am going to raise one thing that I nearly forgot. PAICTA runs webinars twice a month. We've had one in partnership with CEDA, Eastern Cape, looking at localization. I will strongly suggest that everyone online today needs to follow and make sure that you you listen and you follow the discussions that are happening. This is for information dissemination, and information leads to knowledge. In my small corner, that's what I was taught. We are having 5 more webinars with SIDA, and these are strictly addressing Eastern Cape. If you want to know your province, if you need to understand what role the municipality in municipalities or district municipalities are playing towards your development as township or as a youth in the province, please follow the webinars to get all the information that is needed, so that you must be equipped to deal with Mr. Makwabe, who is more than willing, more than able to listen and support your development or your innovations. I think, Shireen, on that level, I shall say thank you very much. God bless everyone. I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, and just to conclude, I'd really like to thank our speakers, Mr. Daryl Dennis, Dr. Stella Pavuma, and Mr. Wandisile Makabo. I really, really would like to thank you. Clearly, this was a great session. You can see the audience stayed on. They were interactive. There was lots more questions. Unfortunately, we do apologize. We couldn't go through everything because of time. And taking your precious time and being part of PAICTA organization. And thanks to Orica as well for supporting and providing the Zoom link for us. And to the audience, thank you very, very much. Have a great evening. Take care and be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.